school and I love being a nun and like I want to have to leave everything and join a convent and like do people even do that anymore? Like I don't even know. Hi, my name is Kaylee and I'm the Catholic Campus Minister for the Diocese of St. Catharines. Welcome to our chaplaincy channel, Build Momentum. About a week ago, I posted a few photos of me and my boyfriend Greg for the first time. And the caption was, God's plans are greater than everything else. I was 98% sure God was calling me to be a nun for multiple years. God surprised me and redirected my course. God is the best author. Ask me if you ever want to hear the story. Now, I knew lots of people were going to be excited for us, but I did not realize how many people were going to be eager to hear the story. And so that's what inspired this new series of videos. I'm going to be sharing the story of my discernment journey and how God has worked in my life over the past 8 years. And I'll also be kind of sharing the things that I learned about discernment along the way. This episode is going to be about how I felt God initially calling me to consider a vocation to religious life and how I reacted to that call. In my sharing of this story, I really want you to see that God is truly the author of this story, so I don't get any of the credit for that. And he is also truly the protagonist. It is him who is the protagonist in all our stories, pursuing us and loving us and inviting us to love him back. The first video on this channel is actually me sharing my testimony. So I'm not going to share that in this video. I'm going to assume that you've already watched that, and I'm going to be telling you instead the story of my second and third year of university. So after I put Christ at the center of my life in first year, how did God move? How was he inviting me to grow? And what was he calling me to do? So at the end of my first year of university, I had decided to put Christ at the center of my life at the end of taking Discovery. But I didn't fully recognize the depths of that decision or what God was going to do with my life as a result of that decision. But kind of the first major thing that happened after that was I went to World Youth Day in Rio. And I could tell you, I could talk for hours about that trip. But the part of that trip that's really relevant to my vocation story is one of the days we spent, we had lunch with a group of consecrated laywomen. And I had never heard of consecrated laywomen before going to have lunch with them with the rest of the group. And when I still remember like having my plate and having all the food out, and I was putting the food on my plate, and I was like, God, like, you better not mean anything by this. Like, I have my life planned. This better not mean anything that, and when I said meant this better not mean anything, it was just, I was surprised. Like, I thought I knew what, vocation meant. I thought I knew what it meant when it came to like marriage or religious life. And I had thought that I was definitely going to be called to marriage because that's what I just always assumed growing up. And so kind of being surprised and realizing that maybe I didn't know everything about vocation. And also just like this little poke in my heart that went along with it. That's what led to the little sassy answer to God of like, you better not mean anything by this. And over the course of the months after that trip, those women kept coming up in the back of my mind. And every time I was at Mass and, during the prayers of the faithful, they would say, oh, we're going to pray for more vocations to religious life and the priesthood or whatever. Every single time that intention came up, it was like God was like, poke, 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 poke. It was like a little poke in my heart every single time. And every time I'd be like, la la la, doesn't mean anything, la la la. I just kind of tried to do my best to ignore it, or every time it came up, I would just kind of put it on the back burner in my mind. And in the fall of my second year of university, I was a Dawn in my second and third and fourth year, and I was in my residence room one night, like just trying to go to bed, and this had come up again. And I kind of had this moment of like sitting it up because I kept being like, like, doesn't mean anything, doesn't mean anything. I had this moment of, but what if it does mean something? I just started like bawling because I was like, I love school and I love being a nun, and like I want to have to leave everything and join a convent, and like, do people even do that anymore? Like, I don't even know. So I just kind of started freaking out a little bit. And then I realized that I couldn't handle that at that moment, and I was just like, I can't handle this right now, and I just like lied back down and prayed my rosary until I fell asleep, and then continued to ignore it for a couple more months. So then in January of my second year, I was at Mass on campus, and the prayer intention during the prayers of the faithful to pray for more vocations to priesthood and religious life came up again. And again, it was like poke, 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 poke. It was almost like Jesus was like, hey, maybe we're talking about you. And when it came up, I was like, oh la la, trying to ignore it. But that day, after I went up and received Jesus in the Eucharist, I was kneeling down, and I was finally just like, okay, God, fine. I will seriously consider it. It's on the table. It's in the cards. I will seriously consider it. I'm not saying yes, but I will consider it. It being religious life. In that moment of just surrendering to God and being open to whatever His will is, I had such a level of peace in my heart that I had never experienced before. And so in that moment of like peace and realizing that's what was happening, I was like, what does this mean? So I knew that's the direction that God kind of wanted me to start walking. And but at that point in time, I didn't know of anybody else who is discerning religious life. I didn't know if it was something that girls even did anymore, and I didn't know where to start. But I decided that since I couldn't handle such a big question at that point in time, that I would be open to what God wanted me to do that day. I would kind of start every morning just kind of praying and saying, God, I can't handle that big a question. I can't handle trying to figure out ultimately what you want me to do with my life. But I can look at today and kind of give you today. So whatever you want me to do today, I will do. And that just led to so many circumstances and so much grace. Like, it was like a full, like, 2 weeks of just like constant graces. I met people that, like, I was a Don, which I mentioned earlier, and students started coming to me because I just was open to it. I was, God, send me whoever. And so I met students, and students started coming to me more to talk about things. So I'd be up late talking with students, and then I had chemistry every day at 8 a.m. that semester. So I was getting such small amounts of sleep, but I would just kind of go to bed saying, okay, Jesus, like, I gave you my time. I said I would do it. You sent me these people. I've cared for them the best that I could. Please just help me wake up for chemistry tomorrow. Please help me just also get my schoolwork done, and I will always continue to say yes to you. And he did. Like, it was miraculous how little sleep I was getting those first couple of weeks after just kind of being open and being willing to do what God was calling me to do. And how suddenly he always gave me the grace and the time and the energy and the focus to get everything done that he wanted me to, whether that was my schoolwork or extracurriculars or my job or supporting extra people in my job. He always provided everything I needed for what was happening. And kind of towards the end of those first 2 weeks, I was like, wow, God, like, I'm so grateful for all of this. Like, I truly do know that you provide and that your will is what is good. And but I was also like, but like, I'm also only human, and I'm eventually need to sleep more. And the next day was a snow day. So I slept for like 6 hours. I took like a 6-hour nap. but those first initial 2 weeks were really like formative. Like they really did teach me a lot about God and his providence and what it means to do his will. So just to recap what I learned during this season of my life and what I want you to get out of this story is that God really does move when you give him permission to do so in your life, and that whatever he asks for you to do, he will always provide what you need to give. You don't need to be afraid of God asking more than what you have, because he's going to ask a lot, but he will also provide everything you need to fulfill what he is calling you to. I hope you enjoyed this episode. The next one is going to be about how Jesus really wooed and pursued me and how I ended up falling in love with him. Until then, I love you. I'm praying for you. I'm sending you hugs from here. And as always, strive for holiness.